Welcome to the 16th season of the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our panel includes Neil Riddell of the Altoona Mirror, Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com, Jacob Cowker of WTAJ Sports, and a special guest nitwit each week. The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells, Reed, and Solani, orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By Your Rehab Choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday.
Well, for the 10th straight year, Penn State closes with a winning record. The Nittany Lions get the Pinstripe Bowl win, the championship rings, the ones that actually say champion, with a 31-30 OT win over Boston College. We, of course, are the Nitwits one last time for the 2014 season. He's Neil Riddell, Mark Brennan, Mike Irwin, and I'm Jacob Cowker. A lot of parallels, Neil, between how Penn State opened the year and how they finished it.
Yeah, and remarkable because, I mean, to me, the biggest thing that came out of this game is there had been so much uncertainty about the offense, the quarterback, the offensive coordinator, and all that was washed away in one just tremendous performance. And I think that I give John Donovan and the offensive staff, Christian Hackenberg, played as well as he's really ever played, and to be able to take this kind of momentum in next year was really a great sign.
Have we ever seen this much redemption in one game? You had Christian Hackenberg, you had John Donovan, you had the offensive line, you had Geno Lewis, Kyle Carter, and the greatest redemption story probably in Penn State history, Sam Ficken, who had a great year, but obviously started off, it was so difficult to win that game. To me, you know, to see these guys, the stick-to-itiveness, listen, this was not a perfect season, and these guys would be the first ones to say it, but to bounce back as a team because they struggled down the stretch, kind of, you know, I don't want to say back their way into a bowl because they earned it, but to come out and beat a good team, not a great team, I think it just, the whole redemption theme kind of stuck out to me.
You know, it seemed like they made a lot of adjustments over this couple-week period, you know, to come back out. And I thought particularly Hackenberg getting rid of the ball much quicker than he has in the past games. Maybe he was at the beginning of the year, but then in this game, I mean, it seemed like the receivers were getting open quickly and, you know, separating himself from the defense, and then Hackenberg was picking them up. So the offensive comeback, I mean, for 3 quarters, who knew what was going to happen? But that fourth quarter, I mean, coming back, it was a fine line between, you know, a big win and a loss. It would have been a very disappointing loss, but coming back, and you have to feel sorry for Boston College missing that extra point was a big factor, but Penn State responded, and it's great going into this season for next year, you know, to set the stage like that.
Yeah.
I was impressed with the way the offensive line picked up the BC pressure. You know, they made the cornerbacks and the secondary players cover Penn State's receivers. They gave Hackenberg that just a few extra seconds to throw the ball.
Well, you know, you saw a lot of things also that you didn't see since the UCF game. A lot of slants. Lewis was a big factor. The tight ends were monsters in overtime.
Third downs.
But, you know, it is amazing when, you know, Hackenberg went back to pass 50 times. Usually you go back that many times, you lose. And how much smarter John Donovan got because the offensive line got better.
Well, the other thing that I thought was important, and I wish I would have had a chance to get a microphone to ask a question. It was very difficult to do that there, but they went hurry-up offense for a good portion of that second half, and I think that really helped. It kept Boston College on its toes. The one guy your heart really goes out for, Miles Diefenbach, worked so hard to get back. He goes out, but to the credit of the offensive line, they were successful even without him in there. But yeah, I think the tempo in that late in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, Hackenberg just looked like he had a rhythm that we hadn't seen. He was tapping the ball, he was firing it out there. And I think that speaks to good coaching, and I think it speaks to the fact that clearly Hackenberg was a much healthier player in that game than he had been toward the end of the season.
You know, and there were other players that have made big plays. I mean, Geno Lewis got loose down the sidelines, and actually he came back and stole the ball away from the defensive back, which was a big play, or could have been an interception.
That would have ended the game.
Jesse James making a second effort to get the first down before that, and then the pass to Carter. So a lot of guys stepped up in this game, and that's where I really like this Penn State team from an athletic standpoint. I think they have a lot of really good athletes on this team. I mean, there are a lot of good receivers. A lot came together. Now, the offensive line, we could question how good they've been, but that was the best they played.
But you know, when they finally needed to play complementary football, they did, because the defense has carried this team since the UCF game. And, you know, BC runs the ball well. They gashed Penn State more than they had been all year. So I think it was a great sign that the offense, and of course Ficken, he's made more big kicks than anybody they've ever had.
You know, the other thing that Ficken did, and I don't know if you noticed this, when we scored a second touchdown to make it 21-14, and we kicked off, and they're running the ball back. Ficken made a key tackle there that this kid might have gone all the way, but Ficken came in and made a big play. It was never really mentioned at all, you know, but you have to give him a lot of credit for coming down there and stopping that kickoff return.
You go back to Hackenberg looking the healthiest. I can't tell you how many times throughout the week, starting on Monday, that I heard him say fresh legs, and just how much of a difference. You know, he didn't allude to a particular injury or being banged up in a particular way, but just being fresh one more
when
time.
You're sacked 42 times, I mean, and it was frustrating me a little bit when people were being very critical of him, because I don't think they understand the toll that takes on somebody's body. And it wasn't just the 42 sacks. How many times was he hit as well? And that's not to say he played perfectly, because he didn't. He struggled. I think his emotions got the best of him in some games. But to see him take a step back from all of that and come back, and then guess what? After the game, as usual, could he have been any classier, saying, you know what, this is not about me, this is about the team. And I'll tell you what, I don't, any Penn State fan who gave up on that kid, I think they made a big mistake, because I think he showed again how much talent and how much promise he has for the future.
All right, well, we are just getting started here on the Nitwits. When we return, we'll talk a little bit more about the Pinstripe Bowl, particularly the experience that Nittany Nation had in New York City, from Yankee Stadium to everything else in the Big Apple. We'll just talk about how different this bowl game was, really, when we return.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells, Reed, and Solani, orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need.
I'm Stephen O'Bang, Archer Pump from Your Nittany Lions. You're watching the Nitwits.
Talk about a guy graduating 1 year too early. Stephen O'Bang, a Bronx native, getting to see his Nittany Lions play in his hometown. Really a bowl experience unlike any other you see. Not necessarily the biggest marquee bowl, but New York City providing a lot of different things for fans and the team, both during the game, before the game, throughout the week.
Yeah, you know, when Penn State's experience in New York has really been good, whether you're talking NIT or here you were with the Yankee Stadium, and if they're not going to go and play for one of the bigger prizes, to me the Pinstripe Bowl is a great fallback opportunity. It was wonderful atmosphere there. Yankee Stadium obviously is special, convenient for the fans. I know a number of people that sort of spur of the moment, you know, maybe with a week to go, they decided they're going to head up there, and I just think, and to be in New York this time of the year. Now, the one rule is, I guess you can't go there the way the Big Ten configuration. They probably can't go back there for maybe 6 or 7 years to keep.
Yeah, well, the Big Ten's trying to, with most of their bowls, they're trying to have rules where multiple teams have to go over the course of several years. It was cool. I stayed in downtown Manhattan, where a lot of Penn State fans were, and they were really kind of everywhere. But I took that D train up to the stadium, and it was packed with Penn State fans. The "We Are" chants on the platform. I mean, what a surreal thing. And then after the game, talking to the players about how much of this was a home game for them. And this has never really been the case. Penn State's always traveled exceptionally well for bowls, but usually if you're playing a Florida State in Florida or a Florida down there or a Texas A&M in Texas, you're to decide it, there are a lot more fans. This was the first bowl I remember where it was overwhelming Penn State fans, and it was pretty cool.
You got to be anxious to see the ratings come out for bowl games because they're sold out at Yankee Stadium. And if Joe Murgo would have told me that the weather was going to be that nice, I would have probably been there. Really? I'm a fair weather fan. I would have probably gone to Florida, but New York in the wintertime, I wasn't so sure. And Murgo, I always listened to him, but he didn't give me the long-term forecast. But it was a great venue, and it was fun watching on TV. I watched it on TV, but the color of Yankee Stadium and the atmosphere, and I know the guys were down at Wall Street ringing the bell, some of the finance majors. I know Sam Pickens was there and a couple other guys. And it was just a great experience for a lot of those kids to go to Manhattan and see what goes on in New York.
They really did take advantage of everything New York had to offer from, you look at Yankee Stadium and you look at these bowl games as we're watching them play out this year in front of empty stands, and to have it at capacity, to visit, you see here the 9/11 Memorial, Jordan Lucas from just 25 minutes away, that was a really emotional experience for him and some of the other guys, and really just getting everything, not to knock Florida, but Florida doesn't have the New York Stock Exchange.
Well, it's also great for the player families. I mean, just, being around there. A couple nights before, Jake and I were walking by Radio City Music Hall, and we see Adam Brenneman, and you see different people's parents, all walking around. A lot easier for families, for fans to get there. I have to say that for the first year of the Big Ten being affiliated with the Pinstripe Bowl, this is a grand slam for everybody. What's it going to be like when Illinois goes there? If Illinois goes there, Northwestern, I don't know. But to have this team in there, boy, the Pinstripe Bowl, the Steinbrenners and everybody else were just loving it for a good reason.
Absolutely. Penn State has really set the bar high.
Yeah.
And they had a good opponent in Boston College.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't realize Boston College was as good a team as they were. I mean, they had a lot of close losses this year. And they could have very easily beaten Florida State, who is, in the national championship games right now. So, I mean, really playing Boston College, and I think Boston College did a great job coaching and handling themselves in that whole bowl situation.
One of those very classic Northeast football matchups. Well, when we return, we will start looking forward, and as they talk about building momentum into the offseason, of course, some shoes to fill, as well as looking at who might be stepping up, some of these younger guys, moving into those spots, maybe getting a little more playing time, making more plays when we return.
The NitWits are brought to you by Monarch Cleaners for all your cleaning needs. By your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life.
I'm Gerald Hodges from Penn State NitWits Lions. You're watching the NitWits.
Well, thank you, Gerald, as we take a look as Penn State has wrapped up the 2014 season with a 7-6 record. Now moving forward, a word that kept coming up after the game was momentum. How specifically do you see this momentum carrying over into the offseason?
Well, I think if you reverse it, and had they lost the game coming off of a couple losses to end the season, I think that would have been very difficult for them. Now that they were able to do this, and we talked about all these guys who maybe struggled at different times or positions, for all of those areas to kind of bounce back and play well, I do think that's a real positive and gives them a good vibe going into the offseason.
Yeah, you're talking about three years in a row of the sanctions where they ended each season with an exclamation point win. So I think that's a real credit to the character of these players and these coaches. There was a lot of questions about the management of the offense, these last half a dozen weeks at least. And, the way they handle that. Hey, they got to replace Sam Ficken. He's really going to be, I think, at the top of the list of where it's going to be a challenge, because a lot of these games are close. I think next year maybe there'll be a little bit more separation, particularly early in the season. But we've seen these last couple of years in a lot of close games. You need a good kicker.
Yeah, I mean, they've loaded up on some walk-on kickers, and I don't mean that as a knock on the walk-on guys, but with the limited scholarships they've had. But from the practices that we've seen, we've been able to get in at the end, and they've had some competitions. Joey Julius, a kid from down in South Central Pennsylvania, a little bit bigger kicker, but looks like he can handle himself. And they have some other kids there who, have the physical ability to do it. Now, again, we saw what Ficken was able to overcome. I think you have to develop that end of it too. But the other guy, obviously, to me, Mike Hull, just not only for his play on the field, but the way he developed as a leader, kind of stand-up guy. He was hurt throughout his career, but never really got down on himself and came through at a great senior year. That's a real key position in that defense. It's going to be interesting to see what they do there, whether it's a reader, whether they try to move one of the other outside backers in there, how they address that.
Well, like I said before, the biggest loss is Sam Ficken. And you look around, I mean, all those other positions, we're going to have people back. I mean, we were a very young team this year and probably lose maybe half a dozen starters, but they're all guys that started part-time or some of the time. And I think you're going to have a lot of people coming back. And to me, there's a lot of really good athletes on this team right now. And they'll go into this offseason, they'll probably hold on to the recruits they had. And other kids that have watched that game, that bowl game, I think would probably be anxious to commit to Penn State because they really proved themselves in that bowl game and did such an outstanding job. They'd have to want to be a part of that Penn State culture, I would think.
Wortman really came on strong at the end of the year. Bell is an emerging player. Amos started a lot of games for them, I think 38 straight. He'll be somebody that, even though they look like they have some good players in the secondary, I think he's a guy you're going to have to replace.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Amos is a guy, but as Mike said, at certain positions, they sure look like, defensive back, they went from having some serious question marks a couple years ago to now. I know Marcus Allen was beaten on one play, but that guy played really well. Trevor Williams, how about the job this guy did after a very difficult start to the season? He's going to be back. I mean, so they're in a situation where they have some depth there at defensive back. Offensive line, again, I just want to bring up Miles Diefenbach because he missed most of the season with the ACL, comes back, don't know what the specific injury is now as we tape this show, but he's going to be difficult to replace from a leadership perspective, but I think the fact that he was out allowed some other guys to play during the season, and you would hope that their offensive line may be better because of that.
Yeah, they had a lot of freshmen or redshirted this year that we've been moving up, and I know they recruited that one junior college transfer that was like the number one junior college.
And Sterling Jenkins has already signed and he'll enroll early, so that's another tackle, Mike.
So I think all those, I think offensive line are going to be much improved by next year. They improved a lot to this game, and I think we have something to look forward to going down the road.
Yeah, Neil, you mentioned the fact that through the 3 years of the sanctions, they have finished with a big win at the end. They've finished with a winning record in all of those. And Mike Hall, one of those guys that you talk about as being a guy that's hard to replace, he said after the game that he doesn't think that very few programs in the nation could withstand that. He pointed out to the coaches, to the fans, to the players, all the guys that kind of stuck through this and said, we're not going to let this program go away through these sanctions.
And I think James Franklin's done a nice job sending that message of universal community about how everyone, they need all hands on deck to be able to withstand that and sustain the kind of program and the success that he envisions long term.
How about a shout out to the Paterno staff for recruiting a lot of these guys, these seniors who stayed with the program? How about a shout out to Bill O'Brien for keeping this thing together? And how about a shout out to James Franklin? When James Franklin talks about culture, and he talked about it after the game, I mean, everybody's just got to get together on this whole thing. And I think this thing is headed in the right direction. Mike, I know we argued about this some during the season, but I am telling you that if you would have said to anybody that Penn State was going to survive this without having a losing record back when the sanctions hit, would win a bowl game after a couple years, I'm telling you, I think everybody would have raised their hand. I don't think there's another program that could have survived the way Penn State has.
Penn State has such great tradition, and I think somebody got to keep that going. You look at the fan base in New York. I mean, how many schools in the country would bring those kind of fans to a city like New York and have them rooting for them? So the fans are there, and they have been there, and they've been supporting this program all along.
You mentioned O'Brien. He won his 9th game today. I think he's going to be the AFC Coach of the Year, or at least there's a good case there. And I think all Penn State fans, would be congratulating him.
All right. Well, with that, we will go to another break. When we return, we will tie a final bow on the 2014 season, as well as honor our Nitwit of the Year.
The Nitwits are brought to you by the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday.
Hey, I'm Ali Agwood, and you're watching the Nitwits.
Well, the clock is ticking on the 2014 Nitwits season. Just a few minutes left in what has been another successful year of this program here.
Oh, thanks, Jake, and all you've done for it, and you're the Nitwit of the Year. Last week was Joe Nastasi out of the chair, picked a 20-19 Penn State. So the chair picked up a ball, but
Chair
it was
beat me.
yeah. But I want we've had a lot of fun with this show, obviously, for a long time, 16 years, and you guys here at WTAJ. I do want to thank Chris Owens for everything.
Yeah, he's the man
Chris
behind the scenes, yeah.
has meant to the show. Of course, Mike, it's always great to have you. We had Joe Nastasi, we had Wally Richardson and Lou Prado in here, and we had Scott Shirley this year.
Is Jamie filling in?
Yeah, Jamie Baker's responsible
For at least
one of your wins.
one of the wins. Yeah. So now that we are looking at the end of 2014 as we move into the new year, the calendar flipping, a big month though ahead for James Franklin and his staff.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a dead period for recruiting until that, I think, second week of January after the title game. And then they have to, as Mike mentioned, they have to button up. I think they'll be okay with most of the kids they have and finish that class out. Will be interesting to see what sort of bounce they get from that. And it's going to be interesting to see how much we see of James Franklin. Last year, after the Vanderbilt bowl game, he was kind of all over the place on TV. We'll see if that's going to be the case again this year. But I do think that this gives them, again, some nice momentum going into winter workouts and then ultimately spring practice.
About 30 seconds. What's the one thing you want to see this offseason?
Well, I think continuing to keep these recruits and making progress. Now that the sanctions are further in the rear view mirror, rolling into 2015 with a head of steam.
All right, well, that'll do it on the 2014 season of the Nitwits. We wish you a happy new year, as we will see you back here in 2015. Have a great night.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, an independent firm and firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells, Reed, and Solani, orthodontics for children and adults. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. Buy what you want, rent what you need. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By Your Rehab Choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday. You can also see the Nitwits on AltoonaMirror.com. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.